Right, now we're into basically what you would call the final stretch. Now this bit, slap wrist on my part, should have been done at the beginning when you first start work on your model. Just means you've got a little bit of extra work now in repositioning these pivot points, because if we go into the side view, we look at our car and we select the layer in with the sizing box and the collision, you can see that they don't exactly line up. So what we have to do is we do a select for everything here, then add the layer with the sizing box on, make sure my pivot point is at 3D cursor, move that along, and then just scale it down a little, like that. Get it where we want. So you can get rid of that layer, but then we have to do apply transforms, and in doing so, if we switch back to medium point, it means we now have to do origin to geometry on each of the wheels again. If you do that at the beginning, of course, and make sure it's the right scale and the right position while it's all one object, then you don't have to go through this little extra process. So now our car lines up perfectly with the hitbox and the collision object. It just sort of happens to be a similar size to the collision object. So that done, go into this layer, select the collision object and delete it, select the hitbox and delete it. The rest of the stuff within this layer we actually need. If you've got any other layers, so I can just do an A8, I'll move that to layer 2. So I was about to say, if you've got any other layers like this, then you can get rid. So I've got my camera and lamp there, and I've got everything else I really need to play with here. Now if you've downloaded the original object, you should have these with it. If not, it's not that much of an issue to actually create them. As you can see, they're basically empties. These two as well could be empties, but by using it as a piece of geometry, it gives you an indication of where the projection's going. Arguably, you could use a little bit of geometry for these as well. It's entirely up to you. All that matters about them is their names. So if we look at this, we've got light FL1, light FR1, so basically front right, front left. Now your front lights you can have up to 3, so you can have front left, front right 1, front left, front right 2, and front left, front right 3. The back you're only allowed 2, and that is light RL and light RR. In other words, rear left, rear right. And what you do with these is select them and just try and position them as close to where the headlamps would be on your car. So you just pull that across like that, push that across there. So that's our headlights sorted. Likewise we do the tail lights, so select these two, make them point of focus, move them up a bit, move them back on the Y a bit, and actually that'll do for them, to be honest. And so there's those set. The light F proj, which is your front projection, basically wants to sit in the middle of the grille, because this is where your headlight beam gets cast in the game. These indicate what your lights are, but this indicates the general sort of centre of where the illumination takes place. As you notice, you only have that for your headlights, not for your brakes. and then that basically tells you where the shadow is being projected. And speaking of shadows, this is the other important thing, the fake shad object. And this is basically just used to create your fake shad image, which will go into your model pack. It has to be 6x4. If I just scroll up here, you see dimensions are 6x4, and it has to be unwrapped onto an image which is 512 by 1024. So fake shad. Okay. If you use this particular one, which I've added into the scene, go into edit mode, you can see that it's unwrapped perfectly fine. If you create your own, basically go into the top view, do a U, and then unwrap project view from bounds to make sure that it fills the whole thing properly. Because although that's a 6x4, if I unwrap that, you can see what happens. And even if I go into top view and I project from view, it's not right. I have to project from view bounds in order to make sure that it fills it, so that then when the shadow is cast, it's cast in relation to the size of the car. So that's what we're going to do now, is basically create that. If your car's very similar in size to the Canyon car, doesn't matter, you can just go and source a bog standard fake shad.dds and use that. This is only really critical if it's not. So we'll just pull that across there, get rid of that. Make that a Shift F3, get rid of that. Right, so I select that. So we add in an image texture, make that our fake shad. Make sure we include the layer with the camera and the lamp. Make sure the lamp is pointing straight down in order to do it. And if you want to reduce the sort of darkness of this within Blender, just push that down a bit. Select these, make sure they're hidden, and make sure they don't render. Right, so now we just make sure that's selected, go to bake, come down, choose bake shadow, and bake. And it's just going through the bake process now. And there's our shadow. So then just save that out as fakeshad.png. Don't forget, it doesn't need an alpha. And as I said previously, make sure within a paint program this is pure white. And then muck about with the levels if you want a slightly lighter shadow. But so long as the edge is pure white, then you won't end up with a solid line on your shadow. It's very noticeable when you get into Trackmania if you've got that wrong, because when you go into the paint a car section, you'll see a very defined square around the car. So that done, I'll just set that back to 0, and I'll unhide these, and that's the shadow done. The next thing is your icon for the car. Now this is entirely up to you. Technically you could get away with a blank 512 by 512 image to create a DDS from, or even just something saying car, a piece of text saying car on an image, because if you go into the painter within Trackmania, that will regenerate the icon anyway. So to be honest, I tend to do a basic icon here, and then I use Trackmania to generate the final icon, and I'll be showing you that a bit later. So if I go into this, I go up into my image, make sure that that's 512 by 512, 100%. Just zoom out so I can see the whole thing. Now put lock camera to view. Just select the car. Something like that will do. And then I can render that, and I can save that as is. It depends what you want to do. It depends if you want to take advantage of the sort of materials here or what. Another thing as well is you don't actually need all of these materials for the final result out to Trackmania. Indeed, I did this as a test last night. As you can see, every object is just flat diffuse, nothing in it at all. All the object has is its UV map. But because the model pack had the relevant DDS texture files in, then Trackmania was just as happy as if I'd done this and set it all up with pretty materials. So it's entirely up to you what you want to do here. I've got a small script here which removes materials from that particular vehicle. So I just select it, run. And this is just a quick way of getting rid of all the materials on the car. Oh, D-body. There we go. Then I just literally add in two materials, D-body, and I'll do a Control T, and I will pull in my details map. If we set that to texture, you can see what I'm doing. Then I select the skin, hide that, select the details, no sorry, select the wheels and the glass, and then the details, do a Control L, materials, Alt H, unhide everything, select that, new material, call that S-body, do a Control T. I'm using Node Wrangler here, which automatically builds all that as a result. I select my skin, and so there you are. There's the, you can use that then as to render out an image if you want. So just hide off the prod shad, hide off the light proj, and hide off the fake shad. And you go into wheels, into render, film, whatever that is. Where's film? Come on. Hello. Film, sorry. Make transparent. And then you can just save that there as your icon. And as I showed previously, you can drag your icon into DXT to BMP, save it out as a DXT5 image, no bitmaps, definitely no bitmaps, and that'll be your icon.dds. Alright, having done that, what I would do is basically get rid of the camera and the light. So I'm only dealing with this, unhide everything. Right, and so what's left? What's left is simply this. Make sure your rotational point set to 3D cursor. Select everything. Rotate. X -90. Return. Control A and choose rotation and scale. Well, technically just rotation, but I choose rotation and scale just out of habit. Now what happens basically here is everything is now pointing upwards. which is important. If you don't do this section and you leave it like that, when it comes into Trackmania, it's actually pointing down into the ground with its backside in the air. So rotate X minus 90, Control A, rotation to scale. All you do then, with everything selected, is go to File, go to Export, Collider, find somewhere suitable, and extract it, export it as a collider. Don't forget to save the final stage, and that's it. You're done with Blender. That's all there is to it. Now, the next bit basically is all about doing work here. So go to wherever you've saved it and select your DAE file and move that into a separate directory somewhere ready to start work on. The next section will be what we do basically within Windows Explorer stroke the command prompt window in order to get it from a straight collider file with images into Trackmania. Because it's all part and parcel of the import process, I'll do that as a one, and my Google Drive should have, I think, the batch file, the Nadio importer batch file I use, to save you having to go into a command prompt and type in a long string of text each time you do this. It's easier if you're remotely familiar with command prompts and batch files to actually use a batch file, because then you only have to put in the batch file name and the name of the vehicle you're working on, and that will come next. So stay tuned.